which is called 6G in India. So this is the first conference in India happening on 6G. And to start with, we are starting with a standardization discussion on 6G. 6G research and standardization roadmap for future. This session is chaired by Shri Professor Brijesh Lal, IIT Delhi. May I request please to come on stage, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, give a big hand to Professor Saab from IIT Delhi, who is going to chair this session. Then we have the industry expert, Shri Manoj Gurnani, Head Strategy and Technology, Nokia. Welcome, Gurnani Saab. We have the expert from TEC, who has been talking a lot of standardization in IoT and other things. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put hands together and welcoming Shri Sushil Kumar, DDG TEC. Sir. The next speaker all the way has come from United Kingdom, my good friend, Mr. Pradeep Bharat. Please join us on the stage. Pradeep? He's coming? Okay. We have another speaker from Jio, who is Satish Jamgani, who will be joining online. Yes, Pradeep, please. I was welcoming you, please. Then we have a standardization and public policy expert from SESI. Ladies and gentlemen, put hand together to welcome Dinesh Chand Sharma. Thank you, Pradeep. Thank you, Dinesh. Over to Professor Saab for the session. Thank you.
Such a good participation early in the morning. I thank all the panelists for making time, people who are here in person, and Satish, who's joined us online. So we're going to talk about something very, very interesting, something that's been on our minds ever since the Prime Minister announced India's goals and India's move towards 6G. How are we going to address the 6G challenges? How are we going to move forward, participate? Today we have a very, very interesting panel. We have participants from the government, industry, people who straddle countries, so we can look at implications globally for what we do here in India. And there'll be some interesting questions that I am looking forward to asking them, and let's see what their take is on that. So before we begin and start talking about 6G, let us first understand from our panelists what they feel about the 5G, the progress that it's making, and about how it is setting the tone, or is it not able to do so for 6G and beyond. So I'll start from Sushil Kumar ji.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And it's my pleasure and honor to be the part of this gathering. The 5G is one of the most innovative communication technology that will change the society and make the digital transformation a reality. And 5G will provide the very high data rate, that is 10 Gbps per second peak data rate, and the main feature, ultra reliable low latency and massive machine type communication, and these features are not available in the earlier generation technology, that is 2G to 4G. And 5G has been designed mainly for the vertical industries. Nobody is going to have the 1 Gbps on the mobile phone, and these features will be used mainly for the vertical industries like Industry 4.0 for private industrial network, intelligent transport system, 3GPP CV2X specifications, they have already come, and massive machine type communication, the per square kilometer around 1 million devices will be connected, and which will be very useful for the smart homes and the smart cities. So such type of features can be used in the country, and what I feel, the return on investment for the telecom service providers will come only from the use cases. So we have to develop the use cases in the country, and as Honorable PM has already launched the 5G services, and these are being rolled out across the country by the telecom service provider, and we hope the countrywide coverage will be available on 5G. Regarding 6G, we will be having much more better features. Internet of Sensing will be one of the main use case. Then cobots will be there, and we will be having the latency in microseconds, and the lot of work is in progress in 3GPP as well as in ITUR WP 5D, and regarding terahertz spectrum which will be required, and the 6G 6 gigahertz spectrum, the study is in progress, and WRC that is expected in this year, and then WRC 28 will be there. The spectrum may be freezed in WRC, which are the biggest events of the ITU. And regarding the standards, what I feel in 2028, the standards may be freezed by 3GPP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Always good. It's very reassuring to know that the government believes that 5G is on the right path and it will take us onwards towards 6G. So, Manoj, what's your take on it? How bullish is the industry about all this?
I'm sure 5G is the most researched word on Google, right? I think 5G adoption has been pretty decent, I would say. Globally speaking, we have over 260 public networks. I think in terms of private networks, we have more than 1,000 networks. Nokia alone has more than 600 networks, out of which 125 odd will be 5G private networks. And historically, if you see, the adoption of 5G is actually better than 4G, because the milestone of 1 billion subscribers, 5G achieved 2 years before 4G, right? And if you look at the number of subscribers, last year we crossed 1 billion subscribers. End of this year will be 2 billion. So I think in terms of penetration, in another 5 years, we should be reaching 35 to 50%, depending upon the analyst's forecast. So the adoption has been pretty decent.
Yeah, thank you. So numbers have never really been a problem in India. What has been more challenging is the revenue. So if Satish has joined us already, would you want to comment on revenue streams? Are new revenue streams being established? Is it creating the right feelings in the industry as far as 6G is concerned? Satish?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So 5G has seen a massive investment across the globe. GSMA numbers state something close to about $1 trillion has been spent across the globe. But there's not one geography which has seen revenues coming back. So there are certain things one has to understand as far as 5G is concerned, the way it was designed. First of all, 5G was to a very great extent an extension of LTE. If you look at the airwave, it is more or less the same thing as LTE, but you have 100 megahertz, so obviously it was expected to give you much higher throughputs. But the biggest shift that 5G was supposed to show was enable B2B use cases, not B2C use cases. Operators were not supposed to be SIM sellers, but then supposed to be doing enterprise business as well to a very large extent. That hasn't happened so far. It still remains a B2C business. And why has the enterprise segment not necessarily taken off? There are a lot of other things. The nature of the architecture itself is one of them. For B2B business scenarios to be enabled, there are a lot of other considerations you will have to take into account. 5G is heavy, bulky, and when you get into enterprise, you're pitted with Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 7, which is already endorsed by the industry, the critical so-called Industry 4.0 also. So, these are all some of the key challenges that one will have to look into. You're pitted against a technology where you get $100 access points. 5G is not necessarily the same thing. Spectrum is another key issue. A ton of issues. The one key issue people don't understand is also with respect to devices. Wi-Fi devices are quite nominal. It has already penetrated into all kinds of use cases, including IoT, including cameras. sensors, it's everywhere. But if you look at the 5G device ecosystem, for IoT, you need a different kind of devices. You have different classes of devices, category of devices. Now, the ironical part about 5G is there was no such thing called as 5G IoT at all. I mean, if you're a keen observer of the standardization process, much of what you call as 5G IoT is just extensions of the releases of LTE IoT, whatever you might call it. You still go to LTE, you still talk Cat1, you still talk Narban. Narban IoT is a extension of what was already happening in. So it's more or less it's just plus of what was already available in LTE. So that's where we stand. So seriously, asking the question, what does 5G bring onto the table? And that's one key question that we ourselves have been asking. That also implies on the revenues. What does it look for the revenues? Fixed wireless is touted as one of the key revenue earners. There are other issues also. The device ecosystem, again, you are pitted against fiber. If you go to fixed wireless, you have to be on par with whatever experience people are seeing with fiber. And there are still issues with respect to device ecosystem for such use cases. That's one of the reasons why you've not seen fixed wireless going everywhere. And also millimeter wave, massive MIMO issues, throughput issues, SNR issues, all these issues are. So, badly designed 5G, I was never happy about it. I've been vocal from day one, not today. Immediately as soon as release 15 came out, I knew this was disaster waiting to happen. So, lessons to be learned, and at least 6G, we don't want vested interest to basically dominate standardization to make sure that, our voices are. We have clear views of what we want in 6G, and we are articulating that in ITU currently, and then subsequently in whatever other forums it has to be done. And that's where we stand. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Satish. So that's an important perspective. And 5G was a bit about putting the cart before the horse. We thought a lot of use cases would become possible, taking longer than we thought it would. So 6G offers an opportunity for us to consolidate, to do it right this time, look at the use cases carefully and build the standard accordingly. Your thoughts on that, Pradeep, if you will, a quick word.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Yes, I guess please bear in mind that when we say 5G is immensely successful, we talk about the number of operators that are live, 250 odd plus. We have to bear in mind that most of these networks are 5G non-standalone. 5G non-standalone itself was never meant to be called 5G in the first place. It was an afterthought for a lot of marketing reasons. The industry prevailed. There were two lobbies. There was a purist lobby, which only wanted the 5G standalone to be called the 5G. And the other lobby prevailed in Lisbon. And 5G non-standalone came to the fore to be known as 5G. But having said that, I'm not trying to undermine the success story of 5G. We have come a long way. The introduction of 5G new radio on its own represents a big uplift. And this is laying the foundation now for 5G standalone to make inroads. And we are already seeing that. Now that operators 60, 70, 80, I'm not keeping a close track of that. So these number of operators who have already launched standalone in their home networks, and I have started to play around with this wonderful 5G core, I think very soon we would see all of this unleashing huge benefits. So today 5G is all about consumer applications, mostly mobile broadband. We may talk about fixed wireless access and so on. But I think the proof of the pudding will be when the other industries, other verticals would start to adopt and embrace 5G. And when 5G standalone and 5G core starts to deliver on those benefits, that is when we can say now we have realized the dream that 5G promised to bring. And that is going to happen very soon. So in fact, I only came from the UK early hours, a few hours ago, and all of you must have heard about the coronation of the king that happened there on Saturday. It was such a delight to hear in the news that Vodafone UK, I don't work for Vodafone, by the way, so Vodafone UK actually deployed very successfully their 5G core network and deployed network slicing to allocate the 5G SA-based network slice to broadcasters for coronation. That is an exciting application, and it is actually solving a lot of problems in the marketplace, in the industry. So I think that is a very good example to start with as to how 5G standalone will bring these wonderful applications to the fore. And that is when I think we can see a mass proliferation of these applications and use cases into a lot of the other industry domains as well. So I think I would say we are on the right track. But there are a lot of challenges that remain unaddressed. I'll wrap it up shortly. There are a lot of challenges that remain unaddressed. So you would know that the baseline for 5G, which was released, 3GPP release 15, that was defined way back in 2017, 2018. I have even forgotten, very, very long time ago, in California when the 3GPP meeting formally ratified release 15. Till today, we are into, past first quarter of 2023. And still we do not have the 5G roaming standards finalized. We are still having a dogfight in the industry about 5G roaming standards. Please bear in mind, we live in a global world today. It is not that we can get away with launching 5G just in our home network and assuming that subscribers and industries would not want this to be available to them in a roaming environment. It is all about roaming today. So I think these are the kind of challenges we have to address as an industry together.
Thank you. So it's important to bring out challenges at this stage, because when you set a roadmap for something, challenges is something that should be on top of your mind so that you address them rightly. So it's possibly a good thing that some of the points of views that we're getting here are not so positive. Of course, there's no reason to despair, because a lot of what we're hearing is positive. So Dinesh, quick few words from you before I move on to the next question, please.
All right. So let me begin with what Pradeep Ji highlighted. The technology has just started rolling out. I mean, of course, from an Indian context, we are late even in rolling it out. But then when you roll out and you start with NSA and go to NSA, the full potential of this technology is yet to be evolved. I mean, of course, we know the use cases, but when we implement those use cases, you learn from those use cases. Even if we have 229 commercial networks with more than 700 smartphone 5G phones, even with the predictions that the 5G rollout in terms of connections will become 2 billion by the end of 2025, there is a huge potential, and that's why we rolled out this technology. That's why we migrated from 4G to 5G. And there are use cases which will evolve. But then we just started, even if after 2 years. So it has few years of potential of its maturity in terms of rollout and capitalize on its potential and get the return on investment. So as far as commercial rollout is concerned, I still see that 6 to 8 years, this journey will continue. But then when we come to the 6G, and of course, even in 6G, even if the mission paper was launched recently, if you go back and see the research work all around the world, it started way back in 2 or 3 years before. But even then, I think we have launched this paper and we have a huge opportunity, because at this stage, 6G is with vision and research. When you talk about standardization, I don't see that standardization will begin with use cases before 2024 or 2025. But of course, it's market-driven case studies. So we are at the right time to do the research work, prepare the vision, and create the use cases. But for sure, when we will have the 6G commercial ready, the technologies like AI, machine learning, deep learning, and even blockchain will be fully integrated into that technology. That is what I can tell you today. We will not have softwareization, we will not have hardware installations, probably everything is cloud, everything is internet. But then integration of these technologies will make 6G very, very efficient, which means we will have use cases where we will talk about it's not smart anymore, it's the intelligence which is lying in the network, make use of the intelligence and make those use cases. And those use cases still we can foresee it, but then we will have that. So effectively, 5G rollout will continue, 6G research has to begin in parallel, and then we are timely on that. Thank you.
Thank you for those views. Research, IP generation, patents, all of that for the 6G point of view is becoming important. So here, I would like to go to the panelists and ask them that, research or IP generation requires a lot of cohesion, a lot of people coming together, academia, research organizations, the final industry that will take it to the market, people who will consume it, and also the government. So I'll come to Sushilji in the end here, because he'll probably have an opportunity then to answer some of the concerns others raise. So the question to the panelists now is, given that there are a few challenges, given that 6G is in a nascent stage, there is an opportunity for people and organizations to get together and make a difference. Where do you see India in terms of its ability to get all of the stakeholders in one place and make them work cohesively? So I'll start with Satish, if you can hear me. Satish, your views first, and then I'll take the other panelists' views.
So if I understand, your question was, where is 6G headed, right?
Is it? Oh, so I'm so sorry. Satish, what I said was that moving forward, we'll need a lot of cohesion between the stakeholders. Academia, industries, large and small, consumers, government, all have to come together, put their heads together and try to come up with a mechanism so that we generate enough IP to make a significant contribution to the ecosystem and the 6G standardization process. So what are your thoughts on that, Satish?
Yeah, see, one of the things that has shifted in the recent past is the geopolitics of the telecommunication space. And that is huge. That is huge, and that you will see it bearing across multiple set of activities. And we're already seeing that very evidently in the ITU activities. It is also becoming very clear that the so-called global harmonized standards, what is it worth? I mean, anyway, because one body trying to create a standardization for across the globe, if you've been to any of the 3GPP specification working groups, it's like 5,000 companies trying to negotiate something, and if you draw a mean of 5,000 ideas, what are you going to get? Just one thought. So this whole business of this globally harmonized standardization itself has to be questioned, will be questioned in 6G. That's one of the key things that will happen. ITU, of course, is only trying to come out with the broader set of KPIs and the requirements. And then again, even in ITU, I mean, the traction that we see in ITU is, okay, there was already IMT 2020 requirements, do plus plus. That is the scenario. When we're looking at IMT 2030, it's a very sad scenario to be in. As I already told you, $1 trillion has been spent with no geography seeing any returns, at least till now, reasonable returns. And that is a very serious issue. $1 trillion in this economy is not a joke at all. And you go to standardization forums like this, and there are, I don't want to name companies, but you can take a guess. And they keep saying, okay, let's be conservative still, and we'll do plus plus of what is already happening. Come on. I mean, this is one of the key factors as far as I'm concerned, biggest concern. From our side, this cannot be allowed to happen. And one of the key changes that we want to see happen is an opportunity for operators to move into B2B space than continue to be in a B2C space. It's not going to work out. Simply not going to work out. Nobody will see another $1 trillion investment if there is no clear return on investment. That is absolutely clear. And to that extent, whatever other subsequent terms that you used, IPs, research, and all that stuff, will all have to be aligned in this direction. B2B enablement has to be the biggest scene. And if there is push and pull from conservative industries, trying to, not necessarily innovate, but then try to do plus of what is already there in 5G, it's not going to work out. It has to move away from conventional thinking. That is one of the key emphasis. We will go in that direction. We will push in that direction. Thank you.
Thanks, Satish. So clearly there is a need for working together. And I'll start from the other side now. So Dinesh, what are your thoughts on that? And how can we make it happen more importantly? Yeah.
Okay, so when I talk about research and IP relation, I see that in India, we have done a lot of research, but it did not see the light of the commercialization because it was not put forward on the right platform. And as you highlighted, when India awards these research projects, it goes to academias. The consortium is missing. Because when there is no consortium, when there is no stakeholders on board, who will implement that technology? Now, to implement that technology, the taker has to be there, which means it should be put forward on the right platform. Let's take a story of 5GI, but today 5GI became a 3GPP part of standardization. So we can see that some rollout could happen and may happen if the industry takes it. So what I believe is that when the 6G vision is there in place, when we have fund allocation, government should do open call for tender for these research projects, not like awarding only to the IITs, because framing a consortium at a later stage is difficult. So they should launch call for tender and invite only consortium. I mean, of course, IIT could be a front-ending party, but then there should be a check criteria that you have framed a consortium and you're bidding for this project. With thought process in mind from a 6G vision, the consortium should bid all these different use cases which they believe will become a part of 6G. What is another thing which is missing is when we prepare a proposal and submit a proposal, we miss out the cost element which should be dedicated for standards and IP, which means you should have a resource since beginning of the research project who will take care and monitor these standards work all around the world, be a part of it, and then submit a proposal, have a roadmap, have an action plan, because when you start a research, you have to start preparations for a standardization as well. And then they should also participate in their SDOs. They should identify which particular standard organization I should be a partner to keep a track of it and submit my proposal as and when it is ready. So effectively, we should call it standard-based research project. There should be open call for tender. Without consortium, it should not be awarded. Then collect all these proposals, match the thought process of the government, and then award those contracts. And that is how it should work. So research, integration to standard, capturing the cost, then automatically it'll go to the IP. You see, what is the use of registering an IP if it is not commercialized? It will only commercialized when it is standardized, when it becomes a part of standard. So it should be put forward in 3GPP platforms to get it standardized. So this is what I think the few steps are missing. We can fix it when we are awarding it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Though that's a very interesting point. So Pradeep, you just flew in from UK in the morning, and I believe you do spend a lot of time there. Anything that we can learn from other countries that we can correct here in India?
Yeah, I think first of all, we all can take collectively huge pride that we work in the mobile industry. When we talk about breakthrough enabling technologies, like electricity, that was obviously the invention of electricity was a breakthrough enabling technology. And likewise, mobile is the biggest one. We have made huge inroads. And one of the fundamental reasons mobile has become a breakthrough enabling technology is because we collaborate, we co-create, we collaborate, we co-create, and then we compete with each other. That is the beauty of our industry. And that's why I think the pace and speed of churn and change that we see in our industry is immense. And I think that is going to underpin how 6G actually develops down the road. Collaboration obviously is happening, and we saw that was the main reason 5G was brought to the market so early, because typically it took the time it took for 4G to develop the technology in 5G that was cut down by almost 30 to 40%. And we will see the same kind of speed in 6G as well. That standards will develop very, very quickly simply because we collaborate so well. And it's happening. It's happening in Europe. It's happening in other places as well. I think the one from an India standpoint, one fundamental as an outsider who doesn't live in India, one thing I see very positive about India is at a very right time, at very early stage, India is making the right noises, which has not happened before. We were quite late, I believe. India was quite late in 5G. And as an outsider, I can count now India in the top 5 countries who is making these right noises globally about 6G. And I think it augurs very well. It's very exciting for the country. Obviously, this is because I think Satish alluded to that as well. He talked about geopolitics. We all know that 6G would be about fundamental societal changes that would be enabled by 6G. And that is where I think the stakes would be so high, and all the countries are kind of trying to do whatever they can because the stakes are so high to get early inroads. I guess it'll be interesting to see in the years coming forward.
Yeah, thank you. Now the question to Manoj from Nokia, it's of course the same question, but a little different perspective that I need here is that given that your parent company operates from another country, so is there a conflict? How can these multinationals make a contribution such that India also is a contributor in their larger Nokia ecosystem, for example? So any thoughts on that, please?
I think Satish mentioned about the geopolitical thing. So we at Nokia, we firmly believe in a very, very active regional ecosystem for standardization, right? When you talk about standard, it's all about harmonization, right? Without which nothing will happen. I keep myself reminded on what happened in 3G. When 3G happened, there were 3 different areas in which these standards went, right? You had the Chinese version, TDS, CDMA. GSM actually followed the WCDMA road. CDMA took the CDMA 2000 road. And we could not actually unleash the potential of what the technology could actually bring, right? So I think, therefore, Nokia takes a very, very strong position in terms of having the common positions. That's very, very imperative. So strong, active regional ecosystem, which eventually will lead to rock-solid, globally acceptable, harmonized standards. And it is because of this reason that Nokia is very active in more than 300 industry standards organizations, right? More than 300. In India, so it could be HC, ITU, and with 5G and 6G, it's important that we also take industry along with us. So we are therefore already playing a very active role in 5G Asia, right? So which is the industrial automation bodies. We are playing a very active role in V2X, NTN kind of standards, right? So eventually we'll have to take a very, very holistic view, right? And I'll again like to emphasize a very, very strong regional active ecosystem for standards.
So that is very, very good to hear, because that's something that's needed, because players like Nokia, who've been in the field for a long time, can help us a lot in making this journey a reality.
I'll quickly add, we have 50 people in Bangalore, totally dedicated for India, in our standards team.
Good, thank you. So now finally moving to Sushilji and getting the government's perspective. So there are two aspects here. One is, of course, there are some concerns that have been raised. So I'm sure the government is addressing those already, or is it they are in the pipeline. So we want to hear about that. And then, are there some expectation that the government has from the other stakeholders? Because it doesn't work one way, right? The government also probably has expectations from us. So could you please talk of both those things, please?
Yeah. In my opinion, this standardization is a collaborative effort, and this participation in the global standardization bodies where we submit our requirements and we submit the contributions, and even if we have generated some patents, then those patents should also be the part of those standards. Even ITU and 3GPP are open for that. What I feel, the TSDSI, which has been created by the DOT and the industries, is able to bring the MNC, academia and other bodies to its platform, and TSDSI along with DOT, they participate in 3GPP as well as in ITU meetings. Even in ITU RWP 5D meeting, which was held in February this year, the academia and MNC people, they were there. No doubt, sometime the opinion may not be the same from the academia and the MNCs, but what I feel, TSDSI and the government always try to bring them on the common platform, and LMLC, that is the result of that. LMLC was discussed in TEC and decided, and then further it was submitted in ITU and where it was approved. And this absorption of 5GI standards in 3GPP release 17, that is also the outcome. In fact, DOT and TEC have taken it forward to 3GPP, and ultimately the patents which were created by the academia, they will be used in the release 17 standards. So government is making efforts, and it is a continuous journey, what I feel. Yeah.
Right. So any expectation that the government has from the other stakeholders? How can others contribute better?
What I feel, we should have more and more participations. If we compare the Indian participation as compared to China, Korea and Japan, even we are not having even 25% participation from India as compared to those countries. Even if we, I quote like in study group 20, that is on IoT and smart cities and communities, this from China, more than 60 to 70 persons participate physically and virtually both. But from India, this hardly 3 to 5 persons participate. And the ITU RWP 5D and in WRC and other organizations, see, our participation should increase. Whether we are participating virtually or physically, it is immaterial. Now the platforms are good even for participation virtually also. If we are able to we promote our startups and other people, academia, MNCs, to participate more and more in 3GPP and ITUR. Only then we will learn how to prepare the contributions and the participation in standardization activities. And this is less not only in ITU, even in ISO, IEC also. The Indian participation in ISO, IEC is also the lesser as compared to the other countries' participation in those standardization bodies. That we have to promote, and the government is taking this thing also forward. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So, yeah, so the government is doing a lot. It's setting money aside. It's bringing the stakeholders together. TSDSI is doing a good job. So, but yeah, everybody needs to get together and try to make this happen. So, after having looked at two relatively heavy issues, let's move to something lighter. 6G is not just about making it happen. It's also about opportunities to be able to do things better. So there'll be newer technologies that will enable. So now I'll go through the panelists and check with them what they think would be those new exciting technologies that 6G will bring to the fore. We'll start from you, Dinesh, if that's okay.
I mean, when we talk about technologies, we already know that these technologies exist today, but of course the potential is huge. Like, for example, artificial intelligence, the blockchain, the deep learning, the machine learning. I mean, these are the technology verticals which will become a critical component or a part of 6G when we talk about standardizations and this. So effectively, what I can say is artificial intelligence, because at the end of it, what I also believe, when it will become, of course, its market will decide, the stakeholders will decide. It's just that we know it could go to that direction it will be all cloud-based. I think entirely it will be cloud-based. It's like a connection, internet connection. You give me a connections, I have the data, I have done the analysis, and I will use the existing applications to gain the intelligence and re-deliver that experience. So as far as technology is concerned, I think the artificial intelligence will play a very major role in 6G communication with deep learning and the machine learning techniques as well. And that is what will determine, because at the end of it, when you see the core technology evolution, you talk about broadband, you talk about latency, you talk about connectivity, the massive machine type communication. So this, on top of this, which will further improve the applications, will make use of these technologies to deliver more advanced applications, because at the end of it, it is latency and data based applications. And we will move from smart to intelligence, because use the intelligence to deliver the intelligence back into this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dinesh. So that's interesting views. I have discussed with Satish sometimes about the role of AI/ML. I think he has interesting views there. So before I move to Pradeep, I'd request Satish to say what his opinion is about AI/ML, and also if he'd want to comment on non-terrestrial networks, terahertz, two other technologies that are being talked about. Satish, so could you say a few words on these, please?
Yeah, one of the exciting use cases for 6G that I at least look forward to is what is called as integrated communication and sensing. The whole business of sensing will bring a different perspective altogether, and it will, ignite a whole lot of industry, which, like location-based applications did, and a whole lot of applications from all the way from your cab hosting to, the food delivery and all the stuff got enabled. But coming to AI, AI is one of the most misunderstood, but whatever, flavor of the day. So yeah, it has to be understood that algorithms in whatever way have been used in telecom. And now, whether it is heuristic algorithms as far as AI is concerned or whatever else, it has to be a bit of a level playing field. When people keep talking of AI, they don't even have a definition for AI. But then anything and everything gets classified as AI. That is anyway going to get settled over a period of time. And the same discussion is happening in ITU as well. But one has to understand that AI algorithms are, or whatever learning algorithms, has its own intrinsic issues. I mean, it may be good today, not necessarily be good tomorrow. So there are key things that one will have to understand. One is something called as deterministic determinism. AI algorithms are not necessarily, I'm specifically talking of neural nets when it comes to AI algorithms, because AI is a whole bunch and a lot of class of algorithms. If you talk of neural nets, they basically are generalization algorithms. Generalization, if you go by the word, is bias built into. Any neural net is a bias algorithm. And people complain about neural networks being biased, or trying to say that I'm going to take the bias out of it's intrinsic part of the algorithm itself. So these are things which are not very well understood, not discussed. The consequences of which are being discussed, but not the intrinsics of the AI algorithms itself. That is something that has to happen. It will happen. And telecommunication networks or military equipment or any of these critical applications will require determinism. You don't have a chance for overlearning, underlearning, etc., etc. Learning algorithms have a place, yes, I agree. But then, when you want deterministic output every time for the next 20 years after you deploy, you always have to question whether neural nets fit into the scheme of things or not. And it might. I mean, of course, we will make platforms ready which will, enable all the stuff. And there are certain intrinsics which will play out. And AI will just be a supporting role, will not be a hero of any 6G technologies, I can assure you that. And that's where we stand. I mean, there are a lot of things to understand about AI, the nature of, there's overlearning, underlearning, It's always good when it is in the right fit, but then, ChatGPT now, you are seeing the backlash. It was good, but now government after government is feeding it. Now, a lot of people think that ChatGPT is intrinsically AI. It's not intrinsically AI. There is an AI algorithm, and there's a lot of data fed into, ChatGPT. That's what makes it more powerful. Now, legally or whatever other ground on which you stand, if the people who are feeding the data into ChatGPT is cut off for whatever reason, then ChatGPT is as good as you can imagine. So there is an algorithm part of it, and there is this dumb people who are feeding all kinds of data into it. Now you question whether AI is powerful. Is it the dumb people who are enabling an algorithm with all kinds of data, which you won't have access to as a person? Me, I will not have access to the kind of data that ChatGPT has access to. So there are all these issues which are coming out into the fore. It will play out. It will play out. Government after government is banning, enterprises are banning the use of ChatGPT, not necessarily because the algorithm has its capabilities. Yes, I understand. But what do you say of people who wants to feed anything and everything into an algorithm? That will play out legally, technologically, in all the areas, it'll governance, it will play out and it will settle down. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Satish. That's an interesting take. We'll keep ChatGPT out of the conversation because that probably is a few panels by itself. Coming back to 6G and some interesting technologies, your take on it, Pradeep, and possibly a few words on non-terrestrial networks, because I hear a lot of that. Is that coming, or will it probably not happen?
Yeah, so just to start with NTN, yes, I think that will definitely happen because now that we are moving to, now that release 18 is being finalized, is being kind of laid down, and we see a very strong mention of NTN there. So it is definitely coming. It's kind of drafted in there formally and officially. So there is no escaping the fact it will happen. Yeah, so let us take a step back in terms of how we are evolving. I think some of the underlying technological components, so I see it two ways. One is a lot of the current technologies, they will obviously evolve and develop in 6G as we move forward. And there'll be a lot of new technologies that will come to the fore. So we can have those two buckets in terms of the technological components. On to the first part, the existing technologies. Yes, they will evolve. The AI, I think, well, my view is the AI that we see today is really pre-AI. It is not real AI. That's my view. It is in very primitive state. The AI that would be needed, the AI that we'll see down the road when we get to 2030, when 6G gets commercialized fully, it'll be completely different from the AI we see today. Likewise, if you look at other technological components, obviously it's a given that the data rates that 6G would bring to the table would be a multiplication factor. How do we get to that multiplication factor in reality? So it's things like the QPSK obviously would evolve to something like 64 QAM. So today we are putting in 2 bits per symbol. Tomorrow, moving forward in 64 QAM, quadrature amplitude modulation, we will be putting 6 symbols per bit. So that way we are able to straight away increase the data rate 3 times without necessarily leveraging other techniques which would even take this multiplication factor to next level. So I think that kind of gives you an idea as to how the technological components would evolve. But then there will be new technologies as well. We talk about, obviously, AI, data-driven design methods, and so on. There is a lot of work happening around the underlying technologies for extended reality. So these things obviously would develop. But I think the other thing is, it's not just the technology, it's the experience, it's the use cases. I think a lot of innovation is happening in that space. Today, we have not, this is more of an academic discussion on the technology side today. That comes much later when the requirements are finalized, when ITU has actually defined the budgets for performance budgets for each of these service requirements. So today it was pointed out by another panelist earlier that we are in the phase where we are visualizing, we are defining the vision for 6G. The next phase would be when we actually start to define the service requirements. And after we have defined the service requirements, that is when ITU will take the lead and actually define the performance budgets as to what candidate technologies that would fulfill those candidate budgets can be certified as 6G candidate technologies. So we have not reached that state yet, but I think we are making good progress.
Yeah, thank you. Moving on to Manoj. So there's another thing that we hear a lot of, which is something that Satish also alluded to, which is localization, ability to localize users. So there's talk of terahertz, some base stations being used only for localization and not communication. So that, and what other technologies is Nokia looking at from 6G point of view?
So I think we already talked about AI. So AI is going to be not the only enabler, but it's going to be the bedrock and the foundation for everything, be it radio technologies, core, transport, IP, everything. So that's given. But let's talk about the spectrum technologies. So in spectrum technologies, like Pradeep already talked about the more aggressive spectral efficiencies, that's given. But that we'll also be talking about extreme MIMO, right, which would be actually 10 times more antenna elements in the base station. So extreme MIMO will be one thing. You'll have to repurpose the existing spectrum bands so that you're able to extract more and more out of the current bands. You'll have to mine more spectrum bands. So if you talk about the extreme coverage, you'll have to look at 400 to 700 megahertz kind of bands. Let's not forget, 3 billion people still are not covered in this country, in this world, right? So lots to be done in the extreme coverage side. In terms of the capacities, you'll have to look at 100 to 300 gigahertz, which is the sub-terahertz band for extreme capacities. Let's also not forget about the mid-band, right? So in mid-band, the current C-band will definitely not be sufficient, given the fact that traffic and the data capacities will be increasing, the consumption will be very high. So we are already looking at 7 to 24 gigahertz as the next new mid-band, right? So I think in short, these are the things which will happen in the spectrum side.
Yeah, so lots of interesting technologies that we will get to see. So moving to Sushilji finally, so what is your view on the technologies? Which technologies do you think will catch on and which do you think are important?
What I feel, the study of terahertz spectrum, that is really very important, and the spectrum even in 6 gigahertz band, that will also be required. And these spectrum study is required in India. And no doubt globally all these spectrum studies are going on, and as already mentioned in my previous talk, this in WRC 2024 and 2028, the spectrum may get freezed for the 6G communication technologies. And no doubt the 6G will be the upgradation of the 5G technologies. What I feel, nobody will be having the standalone network for 6G, like in the case of 4G to 5G. No doubt in some of the countries, the 5G standalone network, they have also come. So, but we will be having different types of platforms. AI, ML will get evolved. We will be having the blockchain technology also get into it. But the spectrum will be very, very important for for 6G technologies. And moreover, everything will move towards softwareization. Then the security will be a big challenge, not only for the endpoint devices, even for the network and also for the core. The devices, if they become vulnerable, the vulnerability may reach even up to the network and also to the core. Similarly, the core, therefore the standards will be very, very important, that the core is also developed based on 3GPP standards, and ORAN and other things, they are also based on standards, so that we are having the secure network from device to the applications. Thank you.
Thank you. So lots of interesting questions still to be asked, but we're sort of running out of time. There's talk about open source, there's talk about, terahertz, there's lots of other things, use cases we weren't able to allude to. But now, we see such an interesting audience here. We take a few questions from the audience, a couple of questions from the audience.
Maybe one or two. Yeah.
One or two questions from the audience, please. Yeah.
Namaskar. I am Dr. Jagdish Shivhare, professor and ex-scientist ISRO. Sir, my question, is there any well-recognized survey or research paper that how the 6G technology will achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals in terms of human, physical and digital worlds?
Yeah. So you talked about sustainability. It's such a pertinent question. So I think the target of 6G should be that despite the fact that 6G will be 10 times the 5G capacity, we should look at power consumption of the network half. I mean, that's the aggressive target we should be taking it. So sustainability is going to be extremely crucial in that sense. So the reason is very clear, because the total quantum of that, this is despite the fact that the energy efficiency is improving, but because of the densification of the networks, because of the more quantum of traffic, the overall consumption of the network will still rise. So I think that has to be addressed.
Yes, Sushil,
Yeah.
side, yeah.
There are two things, sustainable ICT and ICT for sustainability. And even if we are creating ICT networks that if it increases 2 to 3% of the greenhouse gases, but it will reduce more than 20% of the greenhouse gases. So this ICT will certainly improve the sustainable development goals, and ITU itself has mentioned that the IoT and ICT technology will be able to beat the sustainable development goals by 2030. That is the target mentioned by ITU, and even 6G will come after 2030. Yeah, thank you.
So one final question here from, or we'll take both. So just two more questions, one from there and one from here. And then we'll end.
It's just an observation on what Mr. Sushil said. I think the point you touched initially is very relevant, but then I don't agree with the conclusion, and that's what the topic of my talk would be tomorrow. I'll not come up on that. The point is, sustainability, when we talk about SDGs and sustainability, let's not mix up these two things. Sustainable Development Goals is not only about carbon footprint or energy efficiency, it's about prosperity, it's about education, innovation, everything. So that's where 6G will help. All these technologies will help. They'll bring a lot of all this connecting, the unconnected, all these things are there. But then there's a balance that we need to look at, where the basic issue is carbon footprint of the digital infrastructure growing. So that's where we need to be cautious, and I don't think the way carbon footprint of digital infrastructure is growing, it will ever be able to mitigate the benefit that it brings. That is a point of discussion separately, but thank you.
Thank you for your comment. The last question, gentleman there on that table.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. This question is basically, I was talking to a gentleman, I was listening to a gentleman from UK who has come in. He was talking about the actual definition of 5G itself. So, well, 5G is there, we talk about SA and NSA debate. I don't think that NSA mode itself is a 5G because of the, they are carrying that legacy EPC architecture in the core. This question is addressed to a gentleman from Nokia. See, today we are talking about 5G, and we are talking about kind of speeds and other stuff. The packet is the core, everywhere. It's all standard, cloud-driven, software-based. We're talking about a legacy hardware as a gone architecture. Now let's talk about the reality nowadays. The quality of the service, which is actually, I'm coming to the quality of service, is gone pathetic. I recall, almost 30 years in telecom, the call quality was at least good in the 2G network. We were direct circuits, dedicated circuits. The moment the IP transport is there, I'm telling you, 30-40% of times, I keep saying, "Meri awaaz aa rahi hai kya?" And and the other side, "Yaar, wo to gayab ho chuka hai." It has happened to me a couple of times. Now coming back to the 5G, the ecosystem. We are talking about FR2 bands, right? So where are those radios available in the terms of, since you are in Nokia or Ericsson, whatever, where are those systems available? Of course, this is more suited towards the kind of enterprise and the private 5G deployments. That's where most of the money is going to be coming out, not really consumer specific. Even if you look at the handset models itself, how many of your mobile phones support a millimeter wave? The same Apple handset, which is available in US, support a millimeter wave band, but not here in India. The same Apple manufacturer would not support a millimeter wave, right? FR2 bands I'm talking about. So in the current scenario, if you look at it, we are still, kind of trying to catch up the real 5G. So of course, it's good to look into our 95 gigahertz to kind of 3 terahertz kind of frequencies.
The question
So the
the
question here is, I wanted to ask about the ecosystem of the 5G maturity, so that we can have a seamless translation towards the 6G system. I'm talking about the issues in the current platform, where we are going to be stabilizing this 5G, is the question. This is more towards my Nokia gentleman.
Okay. So you talked about the quality of experience, right? So quality of experience is function of many things, right? It's basically function of the network planning. And let's not forget, India is experiencing one of the fastest 5G rollouts. So rollouts are happening. It's going to take some time before you really experience the true 5G experience. So that's given. Another important part you mentioned is the device ecosystem. Typically, device ecosystem and network ecosystems should be synchronized, but that's not the case. Like you mentioned, millimeter wave. So devices are a little late. So moment you have the synchronization of the network and the device ecosystem, you'll start to get the more experience and the real benefit of 5G. So when you talk about 6G, don't look at 6G only in terms of the traditional metrics, right? In terms of the speeds, the density, or latencies. I mean, that's given. That will happen. 6G is going to be a lot more transformational in the sense that it talks about sustainability. I think the discussion we just had. It talks about security, cyber security, and privacy. It talks about digital inclusion. So these are three additional pillars, and that's the reason 6G is supposed to be much more transformational than what we are thinking about. So I hope Yes. Yeah, so that's what I said, the device ecosystem.
Yes, we'll catch up. Thank you very much. Thanks to all the panelists. Back to you.
Thank you, Professor Brijesh Lal. Thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, I've been hearing that 5G was in hurry-burry, 6G we have enough time. Let's see what the 6G ecosystem going to be. So before we have the tea break and the inaugural session, I would like to inform, it's a proud moment for all of us that Mr. Pradeep Bharat, who is here from London, he has been appointed as the High Sheriff of Wisley in England 2 weeks back. So congratulations, ladies and gentlemen. It's the first Indian, I believe, who has been appointed. It's like an equivalent to a governor in India, and that's what I've been told. So congratulations, Pradeep Ji, on this appointment. My request, the chairman to present the mementos on behalf of our Bharat exhibition to all the panelists. First to Manoj Gurnani. To Pradeep Ji. Sushil Ji. And to Dinesh. And for Satish, we will send across to you the memento. And my request, Mr. Amit Marwa, to come and present a memento to the Professor IIT Delhi. Thank you, sir. We'll have a quick 10 minutes break. Everybody is here for the next panel. So we'll start the next session first. 10 minutes break. Those who are having the tea, please bring the tea along with you as we are starting the program.